disabled people in the UK don't get treated well, right? I don't think disabled people get treated particularly well anywhere, but some countries do it a lot better than we do. And there's a story that we're talking about today that really breaks my heart. And it's I think it's an important thing for us to talk about. So, according to the Equality and Human Rights Commission in 2014, 18.4% of disabled people in the UK were living in food poverty, right? So they struggled to or couldn't afford food. Just food, right? Enough to live in a country as wealthy as our own. 18.1%, so that's a lot of disabled people, right? In 2018, an investigation carried out by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that this number had risen to nearly 31%. So it went from, in just 4 years, we went from 18.4% of disabled people in the UK living in food poverty to 31%, right? A huge jump there. Not too far off being double, really. Basically, more disabled people are living in poverty now than in 2014. Now, obviously, those figures will have changed from 2018 to 2021. But I think we all know that, like with the elimination of the universal credit uplift, with the fact that the government is raising national insurance contributions, the fact that generally the economic situation hasn't improved for a lot of people. There haven't been an improvement, significant improvement in wages for most people. There have been little bits here and there, but it hasn't kept up with inflation and productivity improvements, really. So we know all this. We also know that investment in public services hasn't been anywhere near what it needs to be, hasn't been anywhere near what it was like under the last Labour governments. So, what do we think has changed, really? Have things got better in the last 3.5 years? I don't think so, right? I don't think so. This kind of cuts to a greater problem, really, I think, that we have, and that is that disabled people, I think, have been mistreated in our country for a very long time. The system that we have for looking after people generally is just rotten to the core. It's a sort of employment-based welfare system, right? So the idea is you're only getting money if you are showing clearly, if you're demonstrating evidence that you're looking for a job, right? Or else, you're not really worth our time, right? And then, of course, there's the disability living allowance. Now, the DLA is so strict now that it's very rare that anyone actually gets a disability living allowance the first time they apply, right? And of course, we've heard so many horror stories of all kinds of people with all kinds of different disabilities having to prove repeatedly that they are in fact disabled and then they're not fit for work and they should get help, they should get benefits, right? People, there was a story I think it was in Hartlepool actually, of a blind man who went in to the office of the Department for Work and Pensions that was nearest him and said, I need to be on a disability living allowance or to be on universal credit or something. And he was there in the building, and they said to him that he needed to go back and ring them up, and then they sort it out. And he was like, "Oh, well, I don't have a phone, right?" Because this guy was really, really struggling. And they said, "No, sorry, we can't do anything in person. You're going to have to ring us, right?" And this was a disabled guy, right? This is a guy who was blind. He needed the help right away, and he just couldn't phone them, right? Didn't have a computer, didn't have a laptop, didn't have a phone. It was just, it was impossible, right? So the system is ridiculous, right? It's outdated, it's overly bureaucratic, it's just a quagmire that people get stuck in and they can't pull themselves out of. And these are the most vulnerable people in our country as well. But then there's the fact that a lot of disabled people can work, and they do work. But their job opportunities are severely limited because it's pretty easy for employers to discriminate against disabled people because they don't want to give them the job, right? Because they don't think that they'd be capable. But most of the time when they do that, they're fully capable, right? And they're just acting on preconceived ideas of what that person is able and not able to do because of their disability, and they're not educated and they're ignorant about it. So job opportunities are limited. Then there's also the fact that generally in society, you know, in our country, the quality of jobs is pretty poor, especially for people who are like below the age of like 40, right? You know, it's over 60% of impoverished people in the UK are in working families. There was a time, not that long ago really, in the grand scheme of things, where one person in a family of 5 could have a full-time job, and that would be enough money for everyone, and they'd own their own house, and they wouldn't be in loads of debt, because obviously, I mean, they'd be paying their mortgage off. But when they pay their mortgage, there wouldn't be like a massive amount of student loan debt or anything, you know. It was a simpler time, and a time that you would think would appeal to conservatives, because it sounds like a sort of traditional nuclear family sort of, you know, 1950s Hollywood kind of vibe. But apparently not. Apparently we want, you know, everyone, including, you know, people who have severe disabilities, to work full-time jobs, at least 40 hours a week, earning barely anything. And we don't want them to ever own a home. We want them to have to pay extortionate amounts of rent that keep going up, even when the landlord doesn't need to stick them up. And we want them to, you know, to live in a world where the climate and ecosystems and biodiversity is collapsing around them. So, fair play, if that's what you think is right for the country, but I'd like to think most people watching this wouldn't agree with that. And I think, I mean, the Department for Work and Pensions is ridiculous, right? Saying people are fit for work when they're literally, like, people have been declared fit for work by the DWP literally days before they died. They passed away because of the medical condition that they had, and the DWP was saying, well, you know, you're fine to go to work. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, the Tories full well know this, right? They just don't care. They don't care, because they don't understand that investing in people isn't just morally right, because of course it's morally right, and every single one of you watching this knows that it's right. You know that it's right to have a more compassionate benefit system. You know that it's right that every single person who has a job gets paid a living wage. You know that, right? You know that. Even if, you know, you kind of, your pseudo logic in your mind is telling you otherwise, you know that deep down it's the right thing to do. But even if you ignore that, it's right for the economy too. You put more money in working people's pockets, that gets spent on the local economy. The economy grows as a result. It goes right back into the economy. You put more money in the pocket of a billionaire, or, you know, like a really wealthy hedge fund manager or something. Where do you think that money goes? Well, it goes in the bloody Cayman Islands. It's the opposite of what trickle-down economics has taught everyone. So it makes no sense. And in terms of what we need to have instead, we need to obviously more widely in society educate people more about disability. We need to make sure that a disability living allowance is much easier to get. You know, we need to make sure that it's more substantial. We also need to reform employment law. We need to improve wages generally and strengthen trade unions. And of course, you know, most importantly of all, we need to completely rebuild our welfare system, because at the moment it is just so far away from being fit for purpose. It's absolutely disgraceful, and disabled people are suffering as a result, and more and more and more of them are slipping below the poverty line through absolutely no fault of their own. Right? Even if it was for someone's, you know, it was through someone's own fault, it's still the right thing for society to do, to pick them back up and say, right, okay, no, we're going to help you out here. But, you know, it's really, really ridiculous. I think I favour a system like a negative income tax, and further in the future, a universal basic income, because I think as more and more companies automate more jobs, it's going to mean that more and more wealth is concentrated in the hands of fewer and fewer people. So why don't we make it so that the gains of all of those huge companies, all of that, you know, automation, mechanisation, all the machine learning, all those financial gains get distributed to everyone pretty evenly? Which seems like a good idea to me, rather than everyone languishing in poverty for like 1,000 people on the planet to live lives of obscene luxury. But yeah, so I'd appreciate if you shared this video, to be honest. I think it's a really important topic. I'm interested to hear what you think, so leave that in the comments below. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Cheers.